Before we start, I contacted one of your earlier colleagues, of your former colleagues, and he asked me I should ask you how drunk Jorge was on Book of Life.
Holger. Did you say Holger Leahy?
Jorge Gutierrez.
Oh,
Oh,
Jorge.
Jorge.
I'm sorry, I'm
How
German.
drunk was he?
Mexican pronunciation is not so good.
What was the question again? I'm
How
sorry.
drunk was he?
How drunk was he?
How drunk was he?
Well, I can remember a couple times on the streets of London where he was very drunk, where um, we went out carousing with a couple of our music executives from Fox. That night was pretty epic. That night was referred to as the Cup of Life. Anyway, that's getting in the weeds too much. That's for another
Okay,
time.
because
That's
But
when the video's not recorded.
Jorge is a very, very close part of Dave and I's life and career, and we saw him just a
I
couple of.
learned a few minutes ago that Dave was the animation teacher at CalArts of Jorge. Okay, because I talked to him 5 minutes ago on Facebook and asked him
Okay,
for
got it.
input for the interview. So he was very he praised you very much, and he said he loved your shot, which I do too. So let's
Thank you.
talk about War is Over. The only thing I really hate about your short is that the story is still relevant, because from my place in
Yeah.
Germany, it's not very far to the next war, and looking to the east, that's another one, and there are 30
Yeah.
other conflicts around the globe. So unfortunately, your
Absolutely.
film will, in the foreseeable future, will be relevant. And I have to thank you for this, because this is a great, great piece of work. Um,
Thank you.
how did you meet? How did you came up with that? It's a brilliant piece of filmmaking.
Yeah, it's a funny story. A friend of mine reached out and said that Sean Lennon was looking to do a music video for his parents' song "Happy Christmas, War's Over," and I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. I'm not a music video director, but I'm a narrative, writer and director. But it's like it's John and Yoko. It's that very incredible song that we listen to every year at the holidays, and of course, I took the meeting, and I was really relieved um, to meet Sean, who's a very, very smart, clever person. He didn't want to do a music video at all. He wanted to do a narrative short film. And so, in those first couple meetings I had with him, we talked about what the song meant to each of us. And really what the message that look, you get it's like Happy Christmas, War is Over. Two things that it's like chocolate and I don't know what's the opposite of and vinegar. Like these are two ideas that you don't hear together often. And his parents were so smart in that they made this perennial holiday song that had this anti-war message in it. And they knew it would play every year. They knew that if they did this right every year, people at the holidays would have to stop and you know the song. And it is an anti-war song. It was a protest song against the Vietnam War. And so we talked about what that meant to both of us. And what we were really wanting to do is create a narrative around this idea that you and I may think that we hate each other or may be forced against one another because of forces outside of us. But if we were ever just to be able to meet and connect, we would probably be friends. And so from that idea, we started talking about, okay, how do you do that? Well, war is obviously really an important aspect of that. So we knew we had to have it in some sort of conflict. Um, we talked about the symbolism of chess being a symbol for war, and the pawns are really the soldiers, and we're like, well, how could two opposing soldiers connect without knowing they're connecting? It's like, oh, if we had a game of chess like carrier pigeon, That would be a really cool idea. And then it just exploded out of there. And like I think we met twice, and then I went home that after that second meeting and wrote the script, and it's pretty close to what the film is. So that's really what we were trying to say with the film, and we've sort of stuck to that, I'd say, the whole throughout.
For sure.
I think the idea using World War One as a background, I think in film history, World War One is universally seen as the most futile war ever.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, and you know, I don't know if you want to speak to the specific. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think we wanted it to be inspired by World War One, but we didn't want people to say it was World War One. So
Yeah.
we went to great lengths to design, the characters both on Winston's side and on Abel's side. And Winston's side is very much represented with angular lines, very straight edges, geometrically so. And then Abel's side is all in designed in rounds. So we wanted to get that sense of the us and them, but very controlled design from Zach Retz and our production designer, and Max Narciso, our character designer.
Yeah.
So we wanted to give that feeling, because at the heart of it, Icarus is a carrier pigeon. So we had to root it in a time period that was the least familiar to people. But we wanted people to come to this and watch this without the baggage of, you as a German obviously have a very different view on World War One than somebody that's British or even somebody who's Korean. So we wanted to make sure that people come to this and it feels very much like an every war, and they have in the character designs of the different, that everybody's represented there, and no matter who you are, you sit down and you can see yourself in these characters. But that message of it being an every war, that can happen anytime, anywhere, very much symbolizes.
Yeah, and we went to great lengths to try and make it feel like World War One, but really, if you're really paying attention to it, hopefully you walk away and you're like, is this World War One? Because even with sound design, we have Black Hawk helicopters, so that's definitely not World War One. We have weaponry from pretty much World War One all the way up to current conflicts. From the Falkland Islands, we have it from Korea, from World War II. We have all sorts of weaponry throughout sonically. And then we designed our own uniforms, we designed our own weapons. You look at each side, and there's not one particular culture that's represented. There's a lot of different cultures in there. And so that's, like Brad was saying, we just wanted people to look at it and feel that this is a statement about war, not a war, not a specific war.
I completely understand. The problem nowadays is that we are living in an age of drone wars, missile strikes, which has become very inhuman by nature, so that the final confrontation on the battlefield is not longer there.
Just when you thought war couldn't get more inhuman, it has.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good point. Yeah, there's I'm always looking. It's an 11-minute piece of work, and I'm always fascinated how you are able to build a world with the characters I do not know upfront, but 11 minutes later, I cry about the fate of those people. I cry about the pigeon. I cry about the situation. It's a very moving shot. And
Thank you.
first 30 seconds, I thought, who's the main guy? And you must have had the same discussion. Who's your hero of the story? Because there is the 11 minutes also fall in two parts. There is a moment when the pigeon is flying, which is one story, and you have the chess play going on, which is a different story. And you split that up, and still I know who is who, why why are they there and how they are connected. This is masterful storytelling, but I assume
Thank you.
that that needs some discussion up front. Could you tell me
Okay.
about?
Yeah, I mean, look, I am very much a practitioner of parallel storylines when you can. Um I think it makes films and stories very interesting when you're cutting back between multiple ideas that support each other. So yeah, we talked about who our main character was a lot, and we didn't want it to be either of the soldiers. We wanted it to be our pigeon, Icarus. And she really ends up being the main character because she is the character that represents innocence. And to really make a statement about war, you have to see how innocence is affected by war.
Right.
So yeah,
No,
so
it helps that
the
also the symbol of peace.
yeah, I mean, a pigeon is a dove. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it works on so many, like we worked really hard to make things work on so many levels. That's why we chose the elements that we did. And the idea, I had from the early on was I wanted us to start with the dehumanized
Station.
situation that is war and build, and the chess game comes in, and then it builds to humanity, more and more humanity, more and more humanity, and you see these two sides connecting and they don't even know they're connecting, right?
Yeah.
um and then we rip that all out again to make the statement like, okay, we can't avoid this thing because of this war that they're in. So yes, for me, combining those elements, balancing those elements, and having that parallel action between these multiple stories is really really important. And one of the shots that I had in my mind early from the probably when I was writing the script was how in a single shot do we give everybody, the audience, the sense of what's happening? How do you get them to be able to feel the history of how long the war has been going on, how the soldiers are feeling, like the pigeon's role in it? And that's where that, Brad and I were talking early on. I was like, I have this idea, like blood and snow, blood and snow. That's what this film is. If we like boil it down to their environment, it's blood and snow. And that first shot where you have this pristine snow, the sergeant walks in, steps out, and the blood that's still there has
Yeah.
been there, just seeps up into his footprint. They're leaving the footprints are leaving this legacy of war behind them wherever they go. So that was like a really big shot that, Brad, I have to give huge props to Brad for it, because Brad, there was a time when we were having to cut the film down, and the shot wasn't working. I'm like, I know I need this thing, but we're having a hard time figuring out. And Brad was such a champion of that shot and not letting go of it. And I mean, champion for the whole film, but especially that when I was starting to like, I don't know how we're gonna do this. Brad was the one that was really fighting for that. So thank you.
Yeah,
It,
I knew
it
it'd
was.
be back.
I have to say, this shot, the blood coming into the footprints, was a shot that immediately connected me to the movie. That's a moment when I clicked into the film and wanted to know what's happening next, and I wouldn't stop until I see the final credits rolling. That's a brilliant idea. But the film is full of such great moments. I particularly loved the soldiers saluting to the dove, to the pigeon. That was so clever. And the
That
character
was
development
another one. That was another one that Brad defended. It was great.
and
Yeah.
I love the character design. I love the moment when the pigeon is giving the leg to the little piece of paper. There's so many little things that make this 11 minutes such a masterpiece. I see so many things that are so lifeless, so dull, so without any ideas, and this is 11 minutes full of ideas. Um, is it hard to choose? Is it how have you become? You must have more ideas. You must have had more ideas. Uh, um, I
We've got
think
lots of ideas.
I think it's the most difficult thing to choose what to put in a movie and what to cut out, because 11 minutes isn't the world, and in hindsight, I can tell you it's brilliant, but I think you must have um, much more on the
Well,
plate
look,
than that.
I mean, you start with an idea. Hopefully, you start with an idea that's really good, and we did on this one, which makes the job a lot easier. But with Brad and I, I'm a writer director that's like producer minded. Brad's a producer and studio head that is director minded and writer minded. Like we're a very good combination in that way. And Brad and I both come from animation. We both started as animators, but we are approaching filmmaking in our studio in a way that we honor that core that got us interested into animation in the first place. But this partnership is very rare. We're just a solid team.
I like to think of us as the animated Coen brothers because we both can wear both hats, and it's there's never ego doesn't get in the way. Like if there's a better idea, and that even speaks to, you talk about us having a lot of ideas that maybe didn't make it into the film, and there definitely were. But Dave and I, especially Dave being at Pixar, but we had this group of brain trust, you know, filmmaker colleagues that we have from our past that we brought into this whole process. And, you know, it was just so great. Like Dave says often, they didn't come into it trying to make their film. They tried to help us make a better version of our film, and we feel very safe with a group like that. So there were these key moments, key milestones throughout, the production of this thing where we would, do a Zoom call with them, and they would watch it, and then we would get on and talk about it. And, it's just so amazing the talent in the group, and how quickly they can point out something that is right in front of your face that you just can't see.
Yeah.
Because you're so in it, you're so in the weeds. And it's just invaluable. I don't care who you are as a filmmaker. You can't make these things on your own. Like you have it is a very collaborative medium, obviously, but you have to bring people in from the outside to, you know, wave the flag when something's not working right. And I will say the story is very close to what Dave wrote, but there are some very key moments that were different, especially in the battle part of the second half of the short, that just weren't working. And a couple key suggestions from our brain trust just it clicked into place, and I think it went from being good to being better than just good, I think.
Yeah, and I attribute that, from my experience being at Pixar for 20 years and especially in the early days, that was very much the approach at Pixar was you support the director's idea. Um, and that also means that when inevitably every director's production is going to get in some sort of trouble. It's just that's filmmaking. If they please show me a filmmaker that like knows exactly the entire film from start to finish on day one, and it's like, well, good for them because they're
Yeah.
God or
It's
something.
like in Ed's book.
Yeah.
He says you're gonna have problems. It's just a matter of when, and are you
Well, and how you react to them.
prepared to react to them, and
Yeah.
what plan is in place when you hit an icy patch? Like, how do you get the car back under control?
And for me, like personally, like I started pitching short ideas in 2005 at Pixar. So had been there for a few years. I felt, like, okay, I'm going to start doing this now because I studied painting. I was an animator for, 15 years at that point. And I went to school for painting. I didn't go to school for filmmaking. And I started pitching ideas in 2005. And by 2012, 7 years later, I had finally gotten my first short greenlit. So it took me 7 years pitching, storyboard writing. And I was very lucky because early on, John Lasseter, Pete Docter, they championed me to catch up to what they expected out of storytelling. And by 2012, I think I had pitched Lou, and they're like, this is great. So I had a friend stop me in the hallway one day after I'd been pitching for 7 years and finally got greenlit on a film. He's like, Mullins, come here. I'm like, geez, what's going on? I go in the office. And it was Max Brace, who's the head of story on Finding Dory. He's like, how the fuck did you do that? I was like, what do you, I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I pitched them I pitched them 3 story ideas and they didn't like any of them. And I was like, screw this, and he's like, how do you just sit there and pitch and they say no, and you pitch and they say no, and you pitch and they say no. And I said, well, it was 2 things. One is, I'm compelled to do it because if I'm not writing and trying to pitch ideas and get ideas made, I'm a very miserable person. I would much rather write and pitch and put ideas out there and get them rejected than not do that at all. It's just a compulsion. But probably more importantly, I was like, well, these guys know what they're doing, and I'm looking at this as film school. And if I'm pitching an idea and it's not coming across and it's not landing with them, there's probably something wrong with it that I need to improve. So for me, just going back to what Brad and I were talking about, this idea that you're trying to make the film the best you can every step of the way. Don't let your ego get in the way of that, because there's a lot of great ideas. Look, I'm the director. I get to say what's in the film and not. Brad and I, as a producer, we get to say what that is. So why not listen to ideas? Why not let people come in with ideas? It's, at the end of the day, I get to say what's in there or not. So for me, like, having a crew that's very collaborative is the most important thing, because that's what makes the film better.
Yeah.
There's so many. You must understand. I'm very much interested in storytelling and in the development of an idea. I would have to ask now about Unreal, about Weta FX, about the connections you all had, and that's something Brett should tell us, because as a producer you have to deal with all those aspects. I would have to ask if you acting out upfront with live action persons, is this cheating in animation? That's something I would like to know. Is it really becoming quicker now from the idea to the finished product and so much? Give me your, because we are running out of time, so give me your all in a nutshell thing.
Well, first I would say what we're doing at ElectroLeague is very different, than what Dave and I have done previously in our career. And I'll have to say that the original idea probably came when I was working on Lord of the Rings with Peter Jackson at Weta. And we used mocap, but there was one shot in particular where we used I brought mocap into a shot that we had to use the mocap on, but I used it as a jumping off point. Like, we had tools where you could capture keyframes, key moments, because there was a CG character interacting with a live action character. It was when Gollum was pulling Frodo out of the dead marshes. So he's literally got a hold of his clothes, and you have to have registration in that moment. So I had to use it at some level, but we felt we needed to push the performance in another way. So that led, flash forward to a few years ago when we came up this whole idea for ElectroLeague. The whole idea is to go from script and capture story instead of storyboarding it. And yes, it speeds things up, and not because we're trying to speed things up for speed's sake. It's to give us more swings at the plate. It's all about iterations. As I said earlier, it's, you have to get it up so people can talk about it and point out what's working, what's not working. So the earlier you get it up, like up on reels, we can actually assess where we are. I come from features, and I think, normally it takes about 6 months to get your first version up on reels. When we capture it, we can do it in like 30 days. So you've already saved yourself 5 months of production time, where you can iterate more in those 5 months. So as each iteration happens, we're capturing on stage, and that is just being used as a rough blocking approximation of our film. And with Unreal Engine, you can actually have textured versions of your environment and your characters. So you're seeing a far more approximated version than you would if you were storyboarding it. And Dave and I both love storyboarding as an art form, and I think you lose something by doing it this way. But I, as a producer and wearing both hats, producer and creative, I think it gets us there faster, but it also empowers the filmmaker to make more choices along the way, just get to see the film more. So you fail early and iterate often, as we say. But
When
in
do you
terms
lock
of,
oh, pardon me. Go on.
no, go ahead.
No, when do you lock your script? Do you leave it open until the end?
Yeah, look, I think the key is you want to go into it with the most lockdown script possible.
Yeah.
But you have to trust this process. We were talking to an executive about this the other day. I think this way of working it's going to take some doing to get people's minds wrapped around how you do this. But you go in with the best story you can, and you're going to iterate and you're going to make changes to your story. It's just inherent in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say you have to have absolute faith in your script when you shoot, so that when you get it up and you find the parts that aren't working, you're having a chance to iterate. I don't think it's like, oh, let's just throw mud on the wall. It's not that. It's like, no, I absolutely believe in this. Let's shoot it, get it up. Okay, the things I thought were going to work here, and here aren't working. Let's reshoot this, but this is working great. So it's just, you have to go in. You can't go in blind. You have to go in with real faith in what you're shooting. So script is everything. The idea is everything. And then it's not like, let's just see how it works. It's like, it's not like that. It's like we have to plan and make sure that when we go onto stage, we know what we're doing. So I would not go in blind to a shoot.
Okay. We are way over our 30 minutes. I would really love to talk more, and I will contact you.
We would too. Please
would really,
do. We would love to have a longer conversation. These are great conversations that we would love to do more in depth.
sometimes I have to talk to people which films I do not like, and I can't tell you how much a joy this is to speak to someone
Thank
which
you.
film I really adore, and this is one of those occasions. So happy congratulations to your Annie nomination. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for taking your time and speaking to me. I hope I see you soon again, and I have not to wait until Annecy to get another
Yeah.
little tiny drawing. Well,
I will do my best.
Thanks, Johan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I stop the recording now.
Until next time.
Have a great night.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye.
Bye.